Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
We are back. Good morning, everybody, and a happy Wednesday morning to one and all. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor today, sitting alongside Julie Gunlock. Hello, Julie.
Good morning.
We've got a great show. Listen, the next hour we got a great show this hour, but in the next hour we're going to be joined by David Bossie, the National Committeeman from Maryland, the Republican National Committeeman, President of Citizens United, former Deputy Campaign Manager for the Trump campaign, because we're going to be talking about Wes Moore with him as well. We got the phone call yesterday about him. Did Wes Moore pull a Mark Sanford? No, not quite, but anyway. We got Mark Vargas, editor-in-chief of the Illinois Review, and former DOD official is going to be joining us to talk about. This is good because I want to come back. I got more to say about Chicago. The one clip we didn't play, Julie, in the last hour was J.B. Pritzker actually confronted. Well, would you, Governor Pritzker, would you let your friends ride the elevated train, the Chicago L, at night? And he didn't answer that question. So we'll talk with Mark Vargas about that. Susan Ferrecchio from the Washington Times about Congress coming back because we're still apparently doing that thing. And then Anna Giratelli from the Washington Examiner. She's an assault survivor. We're going to be talking about the crime crackdown in D.C. But, yeah, in the meantime, we've got this bromance. It's been a long-standing. In fact, I think the bromance, Julie Gunlock, the bromance between Wes Moore and George Clooney may be longer than Cory Booker's relationship with his now fiance.
Yes, probably so. George Clooney thinks of himself as a kingmaker, right? And then, and he's such a worm. Like he shows up on stage with Biden. Yes. Right, who has been in cognitive decline for years.
Right.
And then writes this letter like, oh, we noticed something was wrong. Oh, really? You just noticed something was wrong when the guy couldn't figure his way off a stage? You just then figured? But again, he thinks of himself as the one who anoints the next Democrat leader. He loves to play this role as kingmaker. Yeah. And he's doing that with Wes Moore now. Yeah,
so Wes Moore, this is the thing. The question that I got asked yesterday, I got a phone call from a buddy of mine. He's like, well, I don't understand. Did the governor announce this? Shouldn't he have announced it to the press? Is this a secret trip to Italy? So this is from the Examiner. Governor Wes Moore spotted on George Clooney's yacht in Italy. Yes, and I say it as Italy instead of Italy. I know. I'll stop. It's, I saw the movie Stripes too many times as a kid, and Sergeant Hulka, welcome to Italy, gentlemen. Governor West photographed shirtless aboard Hollywood megastar George Clooney's luxury yacht on Italy's Lake Como over Labor Day weekend. Obviously they're over there. Listen, I don't begrudge any governor, any politician, for taking up on the hospitality of a Hollywood megastar. Lord knows if George Clooney invited me on his yacht, I would probably go. But it's like if you're going to run for president, you're also not the governor of a state that has a major city that is in crisis, right, where kids can't read. They have no ability to do math. There is crime as bad as Chicago's. Okay. So, when you're a politician, you don't get to do all the things you want to do. It is tone deaf. It is gross. It looks like he's ignoring the suffering of his state, and he has presidential aspirations. Good luck. Good luck. This looks real good. And you would think that if Clooney truly were the kingmaker that he said he was, he would understand this, and maybe they go on vacation together on the Eastern Shore. If he wants to do something, I'm serious actually. If he wants to do something for Clooney, if Clooney wants to do something for Wes Moore, they'd come on over and go down to St. Michael's, go off to Oxford or wherever. But here's the bromance. I guess there's the long cut and the short cut. Let's hear cut number 10 there, Michael.
But who I think is levitating above that is Wes Moore. I think he is a guy that's handled this tragedy in Baltimore beautifully. He's two tours of duty in Afghanistan, active duty. He speaks sort of beautifully. He's smart. He ran a hedge fund, he ran the Robin Hood Foundation. He's he's a proper leader.
He's a proper.
I love
he's
this
a
proper.
Yes.
I mean, this reeks of that Biden quote about Obama. Like,
yeah,
you know,
right. Yes,
it's a little gross.
He's clean. He speaks well, but it's one of those things where I love. It's not just. And again, I'm not making fun of Wes Moore's service. I'm not making fun of anybody's service. I'm making fun of Clooney having to say, Julie, he didn't just say he served in Afghanistan. He served on active duty in Afghanistan. I mean, I'm not sure what the alternative is here, but yeah, I mean, there is something kind of unsightly about this. But yes, there is deep and abiding speculation as we go down this road.
He does this also. Westmore also does this when there is current questions about his Bronze Star, right?
Yes.
And legitimate questions. These aren't just like, people being snotty and trying to find some sort of. There are legitimate questions about the length of time it took for him to get his Bronze Star, and the fact that before he was awarded the Bronze Star, he said he had a Bronze Star.
Right.
That is, colloquially known as stolen valor, and that is gross, and that should be a real scar on his record. And the fact that so he's kind of already dealing with a bit of a scandal. And of course, Wes Moore is going to rely on what all Democrats rely on. And that is, as Chris Plan always said, like the media's biggest strength is the fact that, or their biggest power is the fact that they don't cover things. It's not that how they cover things, the fact they ignore things.
Right.
And here again, we see a mainstream media that is willing to ignore this. Clooney's willing to ignore these questions about his Bronze Star. And yet there has been some attention to that. And what does Wes Moore do? He goes off to a luxury location in Italy. I can't believe I just said that. In Lake Como, playground of the rich and famous. He's on a yacht. And, it just seems unseemly. So, I don't know. Again, Clooney loves to be a kingmaker, but he and his favorite candidate here seem to be making some mistakes.
Yeah, I love this is a great picture of the two of them smiling. Wes Moore is just too happy to be there. This is a picture of them on the boat here. And I will tell you, again, we are looking at a picture. Maybe I'm overstating this. Maybe this is a situation in which if you're on a boat in Lake Como with George Clooney driving the boat next to you, maybe you have the right to grin hugely and unabashedly excited, unlike Cory Booker's pictures. But nevertheless, this looks like someone put into AI, hey, make a picture of me grinning excitedly with a normal-looking George Clooney next to me on the boat. Listen, we got so much more to get to, but right now it is 6:15 a.m.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
This is the thing that gets me as we talk about this, Julie. This was pointed out. The big story, one of the big stories is that Robin Wright, from The Princess Bride and from, The House of Cards, she's moved to the UK because the US is such an S-word show. And yet we get stories like this, the continued decline, the erosion of basic individual rights in the UK. They are continuing to go after free speech. I know this is. I mean, it's near and dear to my heart, but I know it's especially near and dear to yours. What do you got here?
Yeah, so there's a comedy writer. He was considered, basically one of the UK's leading comedy writers. Had big hits, Father Ted, and other British shows.
Oh, sure.
And he was arrested. He was deplaning at London's Heathrow Airport, and 5 law enforcement, armed law enforcement officers met him at the airport as he was deboarding this plane and arrested him for 5, and just remember, 5 armed police officers there to arrest him. And this man is, probably in his early 60s, maybe late 50s, and he's kind of a goofy, big, tall guy. But they arrested him for tweeting, for some tweets, and he has been in the UK besides J.K. Rowling, probably the most vocal in defense of women and women's spaces, women's sports, keeping men out of women's jails, and abuse shelters. He has been very clear-headed about this from the very beginning, saying that this is dangerous to allow men into women's spaces, to allow men into women's sports. He's been an absolute champion. He is revered all over the world for his courage, and he has been threatened by these trans activists, mostly trans activists, just like J.K. Rowling, treated absolutely abominably. He's really sort of lost his career as a comedy writer, but he has really stood up to the mob. And now, because the UK is essentially gone when it comes to free speech. I mean, they don't have, they don't have the First Amendment, they don't have like freedom of speech, but the UK is now punishing people for very, in some cases, innocuous things said on Twitter. And it's not the first incident. They have arrested a mother for making comments on social media about an individual who stabbed this teenager who stabbed 3 young girls. She went on social media and she said some very incendiary things. She said some very provocative things, but they put her in jail. She has a newborn, and this woman is serving something like a 2-year sentence in the UK. There have been other cases of the UK police showing up to people's houses, knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, you need to take this social media post down." I mean, the UK is insane. And again, this latest example of Graham being arrested, it was so upsetting to him. He ended up in the hospital because his blood pressure went up so high. So there's a lot of worry about him, a lot of concern for him. But again, this is another example of how the UK is just gone.
Which, by the way, is the point in all of this, right? It is not just about the actual incarceration of people for speaking out what's on their mind, right? Crimes of conscience. But this is the very definition of the chilling effect of of these kinds of threats, right? The whole idea is that they arrest this guy, Linehan, and they cart him off to jail where he like anybody would, anybody who gets arrested can have their blood pressure spike like this, and so the conditioning is. Sorry, go ahead.
It's intimidation. It's silence. And I think Ross Douthat over at the New York Times put it really well. He said, among the varieties of post-liberalism, the Graham Linehan arrest falls under the category of what I've called managerial multiculturalism, basically an attempt to preserve the peace of a diverse society by sacrificing liberties of speech and association. So, of course, Ross puts it so beautifully. It is, you don't want to upset the apple cart. We have brought in all these immigrants from these other countries, and hey, if they do things that we don't approve of, like things that really aren't part of our civic culture, things that aren't part of the sort of social contract with other British citizens, don't complain though. Don't complain, because you might offend them, and multiculturalism is the goal. So this is what Ross is talking about. Ross Douthat is talking about the managerial multiculturalism, which is you need to be quiet. We need to take away some of your liberties. But really, when we reach multiculturalism, aren't you going to be happy?
Right.
You have to live with the rape gangs. You have to live, which if you don't know about that in the UK, you have to live with the harassment. You have to live with all of these new things to satisfy their culture. And you can't live as what you used to live as, which was a British citizen, but that's okay because we have a multicultural society.
So, Julie, what happens when one of these rape gangers who's gotten off scot-free in the UK turns around and starts tweeting anti-transgender politics? Is that the moment where they get arrested? I mean, that
would make their heads explode.
Hierarchy thing here. But listen, let me just tell you something. It was one of my favorite interviews that I've done on my my public policy podcast, The Lunch Hour, was with Bob Levy, former radio host, former columnist for the Washington Post. He did Bob Levy's Washington. I don't know if you ever used to read that, but one of the things that he is deeply concerned about is the erosion of free speech. I always appreciate it when when New York Times columnists, former Washington Post columnists, when they turn around and they talk about this. Oh yeah, before we go to the break, I love this meme. I think Heather was talking about this earlier. It's from Libs of TikTok. It's two people talking on the phone. Someone says, "What's it like living in the UK?" And the man says, "I can't complain." And the woman says, "That's good." And he says, "No, I mean, I can't complain. I can get arrested. We got so much more to get to at 6:23 right now on WMAL. Well, big time shocker. The Trump administration actually gets to determine who they want to give money to. The next segment, we're going to be talking about this latest D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling upholding what the EPA does. I'm Andrew Langer, in for Larry O'Connor at 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Well, good morning, one and all. It is 6:37 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. Happy Wednesday. I am Andrew Langer, in for Larry O'Connor, sitting alongside my friend and colleague, Julie Gunlock. We got a great show today. We're going to be joined later on. Anna Gina Torelli, assault survivor and Washington Examiner reporter. She's going to talk about the D.C. crime crackdown. Susan Ferrecchio from the Washington Times about Congress coming back, because, yeah, we're doing that again. Mark Vargas from the Illinois Review, former DOD official, to also talk about crime in Chicago. And, at the top of the 7 a.m. hour, we got David Bossie, the Republican National Committeeman for Maryland, president of Citizens United. We're going to talk about Wes Moore. We're going to talk about Wes Moore and his bromance with George Clooney taking it over to Italy on his yacht. Now, for those of you who don't know, like Julie, I do policy work in addition to my media work. I do regulatory policy work for CPAC, the organization Matt and Mercy Schlapp run. We're about to launch a coalition on regulatory engagement and dealing with the issue of the size and scope of the federal regulatory state. And it's really interesting. Part of this coalition that we've put together, highlighting the work of all of the other great organizations in D.C. that are working on regulatory policy. Our good friends at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, for instance. And one of the things I've been talking about over the last couple of years is the work that Matt Jensen over the America First Policy Institute is doing on the relationship between the regulatory state, so the agencies like the EPA and OSHA, labor, et cetera, and how that impacts the budget. And you know what impacts the fiscal side of things is when these agencies have these massive slush funds, because it becomes a whole feedback loop. They give out billions of dollars in taxpayer money to green organizations who then turn around and either advocate for ever-increasing amounts of regulation or ever-increasing amounts of spending, or they sue the government and force the government to spend money there. And so when he became EPA administrator, Lee Zeldin, former member of Congress Lee Zeldin, discovered that there was a massive slush fund, $16 to $20 billion slush fund that had been created towards the tail end of the Biden administration, essentially as a way to keep their green groups afloat while they were out of office. And more to the point, to fund those groups as a way of frustrating the Trump agenda. Let me tie these things together for a second so that you understand what I'm talking about here. Between November of 2024 and January of 2025, the Biden administration engaged in a number of actions. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew what Donald Trump was going to be doing on things like energy and the environment to get the economy supercharged again, and they did whatever they could to thwart that. So some of it was locking up offshore drilling, for instance, or locking up federal lands for drilling, and some of it was things like killing hundreds of millions of chickens to prevent egg prices and poultry prices from coming down. Well, one of the things that they discovered was that the slush fund. Here is, Lee Zeldin talked about this, but here is Project Veritas. Back in March of 2025, they talked to a Treasury Department official about this. Let's go ahead and play cut number 12.
It truly feels like we're on the Titanic and we're throwing like gold bars off the hatch. Who are the gold bars going to? nonprofits, states, tribes. We gave them the money because it was harder. If it was a government-run program, they could take the money away if Trump won, and because it was a insurance policy against Trump winning. Until the Trump people come in and tell us we can no longer give out money.
It's an insurance policy. Where have we heard that before? It's an insurance policy against Trump winning. And so what happened is that these billions of dollars were parked in a bank, a Citibank account, that was then going to be dispersed to these entities. And the Lee Zeldin comes in, finds out about this, and says, no, that's $16 billion that can be used elsewhere, can be better spent elsewhere. And so what happens is that these groups turned around and they sued, and of course an Obama judge in the D.C. In the D.C. District Court said that no, the EPA didn't have the right. The administrator of the EPA does not have the right, does not have the power to claw back money that is bad policy, right? The subsequent administration, they can't claw this money back. Well, guess what? At a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals says, of course, the EPA administrator, of course, the EPA has the power to do this. It's their money. It's the federal government's money, and the taxpayers have an interest. And of course, you've got this situation where the one dissenting judge also was an Obama appointee. Let me just say this much, by the way. Naomi Rao, I don't know her personally. I don't think I've ever met her. She's the one of the judges here. She's just a rock star. I'm going to fanboy all about Naomi Rao. She's a great judge, but she's a great judge who has this pedigree. She had the best job, or the most important job in the federal government. She was the regulatory czar, the administrator of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, well qualified to become a judge and to deal with these matters. So congratulations, these guys. Now, of course, it's going to get appealed. It's going to go to what the next step, I believe, is the en banc review by the entire D.C. Circuit. We'll see what happens there. And then it'll go to the Supreme Court. But listen, we got more coming up. It's 6:43 on WMAL.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
So Julie, we can all agree, right? Narco-terrorism. Julie, narco-terrorism is bad, right? We can all agree on that. At the end of the day, drug dealers are bad people, and they deserve what they get, right? We all agree on this. Drug smugglers are bad people. Apparently, I thought that was something we could all agree on, but apparently not so much so, because when Donald Trump is president, you can't blow up a boat carrying drugs. Apparently, so this
poor
is
drug dealers.
This is the big news. Listen, when I first heard the story, I'm like, because the way the news was reporting it. U.S. Navy engages in military action, attacks ship leaving Venezuela. Then you come to find out, no, it was a speedboat, narco-terrorist speedboat, and it was one of these things. Fox News put the video out. The U.S. military destroyed a Venezuelan drug boat in international waters with 11 Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists aboard. And then I love this. Arthur McWaters tweets this out. The wild part is people defending the narco-terrorists. And literally, it's a series of tweets, and I don't know. I guess I was always confusing Brian and Ed Krasenstein. I don't think I realized they were two different people. I know. All I can say is that I hope Trump is using actual evidence that these are actual drug traffickers. Well, this is like Wes Moore did actual active duty or he was on. Sorry, go ahead.
This is a clear case of the Democrats using the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so, drug cartels, enemy of Trump. So therefore I am friends with drug cartels. It's essentially that, right? And, you said in the opening, it's interesting. You're like, if anything that Trump is against, we're going to defend.
Right.
But I think what people need to understand, and when I say that, I'm talking to persuadable Democrats. I'm talking to Democrats who've not lost their mind. So basically, not the white, blonde, liberal women, because they've all lost their mind.
Right.
But I'm talking about to that small fraction of persuadable Dems still out there. People that can put Whitson in office, people that can get Winsome over the line, Winsome Sears over the line.
Right.
Your party now, because it's not going to stop with Trump. Okay, whoever runs for the Republican ticket for president they're going to adopt this new posture with every Republican that runs. Right.
Of course.
And don't forget. And this isn't just because of Trump. I mean, they were vicious to Romney. Right. Vicious to Romney, vicious to McCain. And they've now kind of adopted this new posture of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They're going to do this from now on. And you're going to get more and more radical as the Republicans propose very reasonable things like keeping boys out of women's locker rooms. The left and the Democrat Party is going to move left every time these reasonable things are proposed. So if you want common sense, if you want reasonable policies, really the Republican nominee is your only choice at this point.
Well, I mean, it comes down to this great situation. The Democrats have never met a criminal and a criminal element that they weren't willing to not just defend, but to prevent any kind of action being taken for any kind of justice or accountability. We got so much more to come at 6:52 here on WMAL.